what does taking the wrong supplement look like to you through the lens of neuronutrition? And how would one know a quote healthy supplement is actually doing them a disservice?
Mm.
What I mean by that is really, I think besides nutrition, besides what we're eating in whole foods, we might be gravitating towards certain supplements that hold the promise of, or even clinical evidence, like some I've shared,
Sure.
of higher executive function, helping brain health, metabolism, protein, a lot of different stuff. But if we're not focusing on our neuronutrition first and working on the traumatic event, it might just be literally money wasted, money down the drain.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think context is what's really important around supplements. Right now you can find a supplement for pretty much anything that you'd like to find one for. Even ones that are really well researched. Sometimes you have, a study population of 20 people, that received that study. I would venture to say that the majority of nutrition research is not administering, adverse childhood experience questionnaires or assessing for PTSD. So we don't really account for the neurobiological impact of trauma in any nutrition research, which is another really big gap here. So that's one nuance I definitely would want people to kind of think about, especially if you're buying something from someone who sells a lot of mental health nutrition supplements. What's the context? For me, in my practice, I recommend as few supplements as possible. But I have found that when people are struggling with executive dysfunction, supplementation really does fill that gap, especially people who do need to eat more protein, perhaps they're not eating enough. A whey or whatever sort of, a protein supplement can go a really long way for people who just, need to eat a little bit more, and the prospect of preparing a meal or even heating something up is out the window. So supplementation can help us meet baseline nutritional needs. And that's usually my kind of first layer of consideration. Like where are we not getting these essential nutrients from diet? One thing that I've found kind of anecdotally is a lot of people who have experienced trauma do not eat a diet that is rich in omega-3 fatty acids. There's a researcher, she looked at food frequency questionnaires of veterans, and omega-3s were, and I believe vitamin E was also on there, was two nutrients that people are consuming the least amount of. And I don't really think it's because trauma does something where, we're kind of have increased like omega-3 nutrient demand, though I could say that, knowing what omega-3s do on a neural basis, maybe there is something there in the future. We'll see there is a greater nutrient demand for fatty acids or what have you. You experience trauma. But I think most of the supplemental needs come from the executive dysfunction associated with trauma, people really struggling with meeting their baseline nutritional needs through food. So I would say the wrong context of using supplementation for trauma is when we're using a supplement with the intent of it erasing something for us or masking something for us. Lots of supplements out there that talk about, cognitive performance, cognitive enhancing. What does that mean? Like, how was that measured? Or taking a supplement for anxiety. What is it that you're hoping to get out of a life with less anxiety? And it's kind of the same with medication. People will sometimes say, well, I don't really want to take an anti-anxiety medication. I would rather do something supplemental. And I'm like, great, go either direction you want to go there. But what is it that you are anticipating feeling or experiencing as a result of not having as much anxiety? And I think that's kind of like that gray area that we don't always account for when we're working with people and they're following diets and taking a lot of supplements. Once you're feeling less anxiety, or once you are feeling more nourished, or your appetite is not out of control anymore, how does that free up your capacity to do deeper work that you may need to do?
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's a stepping stone to what actually moves the needle.
They're tools. They're tools and strategies. And, I think the pharmaceutical industry has done a great job at kind of conditioning us to think like, okay, you're going to take this and then this is going to happen in your body. And yes, sometimes that's true. But with supplementation, like I've definitely experienced cognitive enhancing benefits of certain supplements, but it's not a one-to-one replacement for a pharmaceutical. So I think, we just kind of have a culture here, especially in America, where we're looking to mask what we're experiencing in our body instead of increasing our capacity to sit with and feel, which is really to our detriment because, to induce neuroplasticity and to experience something new, we need to be able to sit with the agitation that's associated with that. When we're learning something new, nobody likes sitting and listening to the professor talk or, reading the workbooks or whatever. But when we have a greater capacity to sit with kind of that irritation and agitation that comes from creating a new neural pathway and creating a new habit or doing something differently when
Mhm.
we'd rather do it the other way. That's really when we start to be able to change.